Do you think about what Lav said? You're a pick-me?
I'm curious if you've noticed this. After the Max situation, that our friendship dynamic shifted a little bit. It might have just been busyness, but I'm curious if there's also been like a shift for you on that like element.
Yeah.
Which I'm not upset with, but just to be clear, I'm not putting my fifis in this. I'm just curious about your thoughts.
No, I think during that arc, there were like 8 different people that I reached out to like start to form friendships with. And you and kind of Nick were, I think, 2 of those people. But then after the Max live, just like, okay, I'm just gonna do my shit.
Yeah. Do you think that?
Do you think about what Lav said? You're a pick-me?
Not really. I do. So one thing, not so much from Lav's critique, because Lav is saying like she's changed it now to like we're all kind of pick-me's because we're all like trying to like serve the interest of like the patriarchy and stuff.
Cringe.
Instead, there was actually like ironically enough, a mutual friend between me and Lav as well that we talked about it, and she kind of gave me the viewpoint of like if you're communicating an aesthetic of a pick-me, even though you're not, that like really matters. But this is more like a political thing of like if my channel communicates pick-me energy, while it would be better for people to try to see me more complexly, it's not really fair to expect the average viewer who has like 2 minutes that they want to dedicate to my content to come away with a more complex view of me. I can't expect that. And so if I don't want to be communicating the energy of like I want to throw women under the bus, I need to make sure that my content is going out of its way to communicate that. Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to build things around like a clip world? Like somebody might only ever see like 2 minutes of my content at any given point in time, and I need to always be prepared and expecting to like navigate that.
I suspect that's a little bit impossible. I feel like that would be too high of a standard because like you can always be clipped weird or your clips can rub people wrong. Like when I read like the comments on my shorts, I don't give a fuck at all. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't want to. Because I'm only curious because you made the comment about like if short things on my channel or whatever can communicate pick-me energy, do you just expect people to perceive you as such?
Not so much shorts, more like combination of content. Like if somebody scrolls through my videos and watches like a couple of minutes and they feel like a super strong pick-me energy, that would definitely be an issue. Definitely like my shorts are made by one of my editors. So, I mean, he's definitely mindful to like not make me look like a giant raging misogynist, which is good. But part of like what I'm thinking about is like the content specifically that I'm putting out. Right. Like because I'm so like masculine in a lot of like my pursuits and interests, I'm very like aggressive a lot of the time. I think I have a tendency to have a preference for masculine things. And I think the problem is that, especially in like our world, when you prefer masculine things and our entire society prefers the masculine as well, it's very easy to come to believe that the feminine is just left important.
How do you feel when women like that one, what's that red pill wifey? What's her name? Allie. When she says things like, my husband picked me because I like can make a sandwich well. Do you think that's true?
I think she's making mostly a joke. I think she's being like kind of like silly in that moment. Well, I don't know how she
it
said
sounds like
it.
She's saying that like because she found her femininity and she picks for like masculinity and all of that. It doesn't sound like a joke. It sounds like she like feels pretty strongly about that. But I feel like she exhibits like very, very, very masculine energy. Like that would be a person that I would be really interested in.
She does. Allie is really interesting because she actually expresses hyper masculine and hyper feminine traits.
What hyper feminine traits? I'm curious what you mean by that.
She can be like incredibly soft and sweet when like moved into that space. I think she stays very like open to people's ideas and very like kind as far as like how she's listening. She's very much like when you engage with her in the right tones, she really tries to be like a yes and interlocutor versus like a no but, right? Like if you talk with her, I feel like a lot of people when I talk to is like you're running into a wall while you're like debating, especially when you have different worldviews. Whereas for her, it feels like a lot easier and smoother. And she's always working really hard to understand you, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody might be like, well, men can be that too. Why is that necessarily feminine? I don't fucking care. I don't know, because that seems to be what we attribute to the feminine. Yeah, I'm gendering the trait for the sake of like purposeness. And it seems like our society genders these traits too. So in that way, I think she exudes a lot of like very feminine traits, especially like her and I actually chat a fair bit now privately as well. I think as she's gotten more comfortable with me, I see more of those traits come out. I think I'm going to mind read her now, so I could be completely wrong. But based on like her lifestyle, growing up in the military, being from a single mom, I suspect in a lot of ways, a lot of women, I kind of have this conception. I'm a woman who expresses a lot of like traditionally masculine, right? Which is why like my church, the women at church didn't like me very much. Disagreeable. I want to fight all the time. Very concerned about things and ideas. I find a lot of women that exhibit like high masculine traits sometimes do it because that's like their personality, but sometimes do it out of like a learned necessity. And I think Allie in many ways exhibits a lot of those like masculine traits. Some of them I think are just like inborn, like very natural to her personality, like being kind of feisty. But I think other parts of it are like learnt as a way to like navigate the world as like a very poor single mother woman in the military specifically. Who's by nature personality type like more conservative as well in like a very liberal space in school. Whereas I think like when she met her husband, from her words, it sounds like she finally felt safe enough to like let other parts of her out, which is like these more feminine parts of her. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of like how I read her.
Do you think that I really, really, really wish you might agree or disagree with this. I really wish we had different words other than feminine or masculine, because I feel like some of these traits I think like everybody should push for, and I feel like it gives people like a really wrong idea about other traits. So something that you just said there about how she might feel or she might act in a certain way where she's like ultra leader, ultra crazy, ultra whatever. But then when there's like a more confident person around her, she kind of like chills. I feel like that's a very human response that I feel like almost everybody across gender spectrums would almost equally like gravitate towards. Okay, hold on. 1 sec. Jesus, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry. I banged my hand. Sorry, I'm okay.
Oh, that was like a gong.
Sorry. I just hit my boom arm.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. I won't cue another game after this. One of the things that people talk about a lot, this gets gendered a ton. People talk about, I hear this a lot, and Allie was saying it too, and I'd be interested pushing her on it. Here's the one thing I actually appreciate on her. I don't think I've ever met anybody that is as eager and willing to entertain an idea that they hadn't heard before. She does that exceedingly well. It almost feels bad faith. It almost throws me off. Like I'll say something and she'll like immediately like, I hadn't considered that. You might be right about that. And I'm like, that's like insane to me. Like I don't think I've ever met another person that does that. I'm glad too, because like when we started talking, she was just saying a bunch of stuff that I considered ultra wild, and I was like, okay, I was just like sitting there listening, like this is fucking stupid, whatever. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try and we'll see if we can make this a good conversation. And then I engaged like with a lot more purpose, and it was actually probably one of the better conversations I had.
Yeah. She's the most ultra good faith person I think I've basically ever met on the internet thus far. Exclude like talking to her is very akin actually to talking to you in that like when I get you're always good faith. I'm not going to say, I was about to say we agree with everything, but even when I listen to you talk to people that you really disagree with, you go exceptionally out of your way to make sure that you're understanding them.
Try to.
In her way, she's so interesting because she's so interested in learning, and she's incredibly like complimentary. Like it really feels like you're talking with a friend who's just like has her worldview, is willing to say what like she thinks is true, but is so willing to hear what you have to say. And that to me is like, I've been trying to capture like feminine interlocution debating style because I think it's possible. Everyone keeps telling me it's not possible. I think it is. Like it's something that feels more feminine that I think a lot of women, especially that have like, because women are socialized to be more feminine typically, will more naturally fall into and be comfortable in. And yeah. Go
ahead. I'm so sorry. I just remember what I was going to say before.
I was just going to say, I feel like Allie is teaching me a lot about what that could possibly look like.
So I was what I meant before. Okay, so back up. Fresh and Fit say this a lot. A lot of red pillers say this. Ali says this, that men are like leaders. Men gravitate towards leadership, the hierarchy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that the vast majority of men are followers and will always be followers. So I wonder how they square that away in their mind. And I feel like having a strong leader, having a good leader is something that women absolutely gravitate towards, but men absolutely gravitate towards it as well. I remember there's like, it sounds so stupid, but like there's like a change in energy in a workforce. If anybody's ever worked, especially in kitchens, when you have a guy or girl that shows up that can take charge of a situation, everybody becomes a better person, men and women. And it's not like there's like all these men are vying for leadership positions. Because if I take the Fresh and Fit model, I would expect like every man is constantly fighting to be the leader, but that's not true. I think a lot of men enjoy following. And when a good leader, when a good cook steps up and is like directing like a kitchen, like a line, everybody falls in line and everybody's like working well. Yeah, I think I was going back to that. I hate that term of like masculine versus feminine traits because there are some masculine traits that like there are things like confidence, like everybody can be confident and should aspire to the highest levels of confidence, men and women. And then there are things where people say, oh, like leadership is like a male thing. It's like I think that's a really, really rare thing between men and women. I don't like that that's gendered at all. Yeah.
Do you think people? I'm not sure if you would find this to be like a salient idea, but do you think that it's possible that a zeitgeist could be formed within our culture that says like men and women should strive to have masculine and feminine features, like each of them? And just to be clear, not all traits that are good are masculine or feminine, right? Some traits that I view as like good, like competence, is more of a marker of maturity, right? It has nothing to do with whether you're like feminine or masculine. It's about like being mature just in general. Do you think that would ever like catch on, or do you think like because masculine maps on so closely to man and feminine so closely to women that like people will always like women are like, I don't want to be a man, I don't want to be masculine?
I don't even know if they map on accurately. It's hard to say because of how people use the things. Like I feel like when I'm talking to red pillars, okay, I'm retreading some ground, but I don't think I've talked to you about these things before, so bear with me, chat. Something that I'll notice is, or you can tell me if I've explained this to you and you're going to tell me to fuck off, is when we talk about like masculine versus feminine traits. Masculine traits are leader, provider, defender, honorable, warrior, stands up for what's right, strong, strength. Like these are like the male collage of traits. And then the female collage of traits is like can have kids and is nurturing, I guess. And then when we go to think of like the negative traits now on the feminine side, like every single thing a guy does poorly is like a feminine trait. So like when a guy is overly emotional, that's called feminine. And I don't think that maps onto reality at all. So for instance, like men are very quick to violence compared to women, right? Like if you wanted to discriminate against one category to get rid of all violent crime in the world, it would be men. And it would like it's like 98% of offenders are men. But that's like, but the way that they square that is they say that anger isn't an emotion, like feminine emotions are emotions or whatever, which is like ridiculous. So yeah, I don't know. I have that hard time in the red pill world of like gendering the masculine and feminine traits because truly all the female ones suck. And the ones that are good,
no,
they absolutely are.
No,
in their world.
Can I pause you for 2 seconds? I guess President Sunday is trying to like flag me for having you on. I'm just gonna turn off my stream because I can't turn off one without the other. So I'm just gonna raid out, get my Twitch turned off, and then delete the VOD so that he doesn't fucking flag me. Okay, I'm still here, but I'm just gonna turn off my stream.
Okay.
So
delete the VOD.
Okay. Yeah, somebody just sent me a message. I hate people. Okay, I think saying something like the feminine traits are all just like lame is the problem with society. Like this is the actual final frontier of feminism, in my viewpoint. Like I think if feminism is doing anything, what it needs to do is help people realize that like feminine traits are just as we just have to look at what they are and see how they're utilizable, right? Like being understanding, like really trying to understand another person is fundamental to good conversation, because if you cannot understand them, you'll never talk about the same shit. It'll be unironically, not to make a dig, it'll be like when you say something and then Pearl just responds with like an actual like unrelated comment and be like, yeah, but this other thing, and it's like these things don't matter. Like just try to understand. Like we can't even talk on the same playing field if both parties aren't attempting to understand each other a little bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Wait, what was that in response to?
Well, you said that the feminine traits were all like you're very derisive about it. I don't want to misquote you.
Because in terms of like what gets attributed to, like, here's the thing, right? First of all, if you're rolling a character select, and given what we exist in today for masculine and feminine traits, 99% of people choose masculine. They're just better. They're cooler. It's more fun. You've got more agency. You've got more autonomy. You've got like a higher ceiling for cool things you can do. And the feminine traits are like if you want to roll support class and like have kids.
Bro,
And I think for evidence of that, I think that as women have unlocked more masculine traits through reproduction and education, they have opted for the more masculine lifestyle. Like,
Yes.
100 years ago, you ask a woman like, hey, like, by the time you're 20, how many kids do you want? And then today it's like, I don't know if I want kids before I'm 30, because like, why the fuck would I give up my life for children? I think it's a hard, I feel like the masculine traits are just so cool.
Yeah, they are really cool. The issue is that like men are really bad at being happy. The masculine traits are pretty bad at it. So like I like both. I think traits in both are great, but I think we really underestimate. Like people will always laugh at me when I like characterize like femininity, and like in my experience of trying to like as a woman with mommy issues and not particularly like inclined towards femininity myself, as I'm trying to like rediscover it in myself, I'm realizing how much more intensely like happier I am and how much more in the moment I can be. And that like, it's like a deeply grass touching experience of just like finding joy. And people will like roll their eyes at me like, oh, you're just finding joy. And I'm like, I don't even know how I care about life if I wake up and like the people that I love aren't there. Like the best moment of my life, I always say this on stream, people eye roll, is like when I wake up in the morning and I have like Nick like pressed up against me on one side, and then my dog will wake up and like flop her head on my chest, and so I'm just getting like spooned by like two creatures that I love more than anything else in the world. And it's simple and it's stupid and it doesn't matter, and it is like in many ways it's the reason that I breathe. Like it's the things that we pursue, right? It's the reason why like when you hold your child and they like laugh and it's stupid and it doesn't matter and it means everything. I think the problem with society is that we've like forgotten what is good about the feminine, because the masculine builds like empires and allows you to do so many cool things, and that's base, and I love that.
Then the question I'm always gonna have is like, is any of that even feminine? Like if we think about things like meditation, don't we think of like men? Don't we think of like Buddha and Buddhists and Buddhism and the Zen monks and like all of that? Like it feels like for any cool trait that is feminine, it's gonna get like subsumed by the masculine, and we all just expect that to happen. So like if I were to say like, who should be cooking in a household? Everyone's gonna say that's the woman's job. And then I would say, when you go to a restaurant, who should all the line cooks be? Okay, well, if it's for a job, that's got to be men, right? When it is, and for line cooking, it's all men. So it feels like the masculine bubble is so huge, and the feminine like roles are so small. Like I agree with you that there are some things that should be considered like traditionally feminine that like both sides should explore. But one of the kind of like ideas that I've been rolling with recently, I don't know if it'll stick or if it's still congealing, is when I think of like the difficulties between men and women, one of the things that I think that's happened largely over the past like I guess like 30, 40, 50 years is women have done a really good job they've maintained like all of the traditional like feminine training in the household in terms of like emotionality, in terms of like forming friendships and bonds, but they've done a really good job at stepping into the masculine role, and they've gotten like all of that. They're kicking our ass in school. They might end up just being better students than us. They're starting to do really good in the workplace. In some ways they communicate with people forward facing better than us. And for men like did the masculine thing of like working, but they haven't embraced any of the feminine shit at all. And they're just like fucked. So then I think in terms of like value propositions for relationships, if women have completely taken over the masculine part, and by that I just mean like having jobs, and men are like, I have no idea what I can even offer you in a relationship, because I think that is a question that you have to ask, right? Like what can like a man offer a woman in a relationship? And if it's not just a paycheck anymore, there's like no answer there. It feels like that unwillingness to even explore like feminine traits because of the way that they get labeled in like red pill society is like so. I should clarify, I guess, because I don't want to talk past each other. Like if we're looking at like feminine and masculinity as like this yin and yang where we're being fair to both sides, I do agree that that's something that both sides need to explore. But whenever people talk about feminine traits, especially men, they're so dog shit. They're such dog shit traits, and every negative aspect of a man is applied to feminine traits, and it's just so stupid.
I think it's because like our society just decided to say that everything that was good and useful is masculine, and like that's just stupid. That's not true, right? Like like cooking is a skill, right? So like saying like men tend to be like maximally, like men will often pursue like maximal levels of competence. That's true, but that's because in many ways like the masculine is fixated on things, and when it comes to skills, men are going to be more often fixated on that, and men are also like biologically proclived to like having slightly more extremes on either end, just because of your guys' like stupid why, and other factors as well. And so it's like, yeah, in the case of competence, yes, we'll often see at like the highest levels that like men often outcompete, but that's not because like being competent is the best thing in the world. Like having somebody like the problem is that we've like turned the feminine things into just like silly little things, and yet we're like wondering why we have like a mental health epidemic, and we're like wondering why like men and women are lost, and like there's like shells of masculinity and femininity. Like organizing people, recognizing people's strengths and weaknesses, that is for sure feminine. It's deeply intrinsic to running a successful company, which is organizing people and knowing who should go where. This is a feminine thing, but we've just started to pretend that it's a masculine thing, because men often end up in leadership business type roles because they have the time and like willingness to like fixate on it. But I would say it seems to me it emerges more as like a feminine trait. And so we shouldn't just dismiss it. What we have to do is like stop saying everything that's good is masculine. It's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what, like when I think of and it's so hard to, because I don't actually I start to doubt the experience both sexually and romantically of a lot of the red pill people, especially as more information gets leaked about them, like that Donovan loser that I hope doesn't pussy out of our conversation on, I think, the 31st or whatever.
What?
Whenever that happens. He got like conned by like a 19-year-old when he was 31 years old. He's just the worst. And he's like, he married a single mom after he constantly tells his audience, you never marry single moms, et cetera, et cetera. He's an actual garbage human being. He's a piece of shit. But like, yeah. if you watch red pill streams, they give you the best advice to never be a good relationship partner. Like it is like a step-by-step guide to like, how can you be the worst partner ever and never be in a good relationship? But like so many young men buy into it. Yeah, and it's hard because anytime you angle something even a little bit differently, like people like lose their fucking mind. If I wasn't so late, I'm gonna buy Adderall. I'm gonna write stuff down one day. I swear. there are so many things that red pillars say that like men should never do, and like in my mind, these are like the most manipulative tactics to like get somebody to like you. Like I gave the example before with like, don't ever open up emotionally to a woman, and it's like showing vulnerability in a manipulative way is one of the best ways to get somebody obsessed with you for the rest of their lives. And they're saying like, if you show any vulnerability, you're gone. Or like, in order to get a woman, you need to be hyper masculine. And it's like, if I meet a woman for the first time, one of the easiest ways to get her to be obsessed with me is to like fall in love with her pet, or like a child, or like a friend. Like if you get inside a girl's house and you're like holding their cat and like petting, like, oh, look at your little cat. Like they'll love you forever. Like it's over.
Yes. Yeah. Because this is the key. This is what so much of the red pill, in my mind, obviously, is missing, which is that the best leaders oftentimes are men. A lot of times men are extreme and rise to the top, but these men always embody some elements of femininity. They must, because all of the greatest men that we look at historically and everything, all of the greatest women occupy both of these things. And so the outright dismissal of femininity and like saying that it's like silly, I think is like unironically leading to like why like anxiety and mental health is at like an all-time high. Nobody can understand each other because it's like all of these feminine traits about like community building and cohesion and like finding bridges along people and understanding and trying to build each other up. Like these are all feminine traits, and there's no one in the world who convince me that they're not important, right? They are important. They're deeply valuable. And we can't just steal these qualities from femininity and just call them masculinity. And I think a lot of times the red pill is they won't call those masculine. They agree that they're not masculine. The problem is that they're so like fragile in their masculinity that they're afraid to even like touch anything that appears possibly feminine because they don't want to get called like gay or like something like that, which is like so pathetic. Like they have this shell of masculinity.
Yeah, and the type of like ultra masculinity that they advocate for is like, it works if you're like a top 1%. Like if you want to be hyper masculine, fine, but you have to be like an actual Giga Chad. You need to be pulling like, depending on the city you live in, 150K, a year or more. Like for the average guy, like they're not. This ain't it. Like being the ultra hyper masculine figure, unless you're literally top 1%, that's just not going to work for the average dude. Because like women don't. Because like an average masculine guy has already been achieved, I think, by like the average woman, right? Because an average masculine guy is a guy that can earn a paycheck, and women can do that now. So it's not enough anymore, you know.
Do you think that competence is a masculine or feminine trait, or do you see it as something else?
There's a lot of things that I believe that descriptively they're true, but they're just disappointing to me. I think competency I think competency can be both, but I think that women tend to appreciate it more, and men just don't give a fuck because they're looking for bang-made children. I think most red pillers should just embrace their inner pedophilia and just find like children to fucking marry, because it feels like that's what they're asking
True.
for. Because
The
they want
virginity,
young,
the naivety,
wide, yeah, virgin, trainable, like, and it's like, bro, you're just looking for like a 12-year-old.
wax to the max. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. That's that. So, yeah, I mean, like, oh God, yeah, that's another argument we got into. Like, I think women love to see men that are passionate and competent at something. Like, even if it's something as stupid as like building models or whatever, I think most women are super keyed into that. I think that's why, oh my God. And if it translates to anything the woman can understand, it's like it's another million level like seduction technique. Like, if I get like in a room with a woman and she's like, oh, can you play piano or whatever? Like, I'm in. Whatever's happening that night, I'm this person a million times. Because if I can play piano for somebody, it's like, oh, you're passionate about something, you're competent or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And women love to see that. But I feel like a lot of men don't give a at all. They just want bang maids that are as young and bodiless as possible.
Yeah, I guess in my view, like, so I would say competence is non-gendered, right? And it's actually like my good tell of like how sexist I think somebody might be is if they're like, oh, well, obviously competence is masculine. And I'm like, that's not self-evident, like, at all.
But when you say it's non-gendered, it feels like a lot of men, like, seriously, like, just don't care about any competence that a woman will have. Like, how many times have you heard Myron on Fresh and Fit say, like, guys don't care what you've done, guys don't care about your achievements, guys don't care about any of that?
I think that's because, like, I think I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of these men aren't looking for mature women. They're looking for girls, like kind of like we said. And I think competence is in many ways a marker of maturity, right? The issue is that like for a lot of women, the competence that they're going to be built in are things that like, to be honest, these guys do value. They're just not measurable with a dollar amount, right? So like women that are highly competent at like taking care of others, supporting other people, and like building like community. There's women who are incredibly skilled at that, incredibly skilled. But we don't really put a dollar sign on it. We don't really know how to measure it. But I'm going to guess that guys actually really do value this, right? Guys value a woman who make them feel like loved and supported. It's just like a different type of competence. Whereas women are looking for competence that are oftentimes like markers of stability, right? Can this guy, if I get a baby, if I get pregnant and my pregnancy is fucking awful and I can't work for like 9 months to like a year and a half straight, can he pick up the slack? Can he actually provide and take care of me and my child? And so like, I feel like I feel like competence must be non-gendered, because in many ways, like the most masculine men are in jail. That's where they are. The hyper masculine, where they only have masculine traits, most of them are in jail. Like that's where like ultimate maximal masculinity often ends you.
True, or dead, yeah.
Or dead, yeah.
So this is like a character arc that it sounds like you went through this a little bit. I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of women go through this where women will grow up and they're kind of tomboyish, and then they want to be better as people, and so they become hyper masculine and almost like becoming male. And then at some point they turn around and they're like, well, maybe I can embody these good traits but still be like a woman. Somebody wrote a really good comment in chat, I think, that somebody said, oddly, I think, you know Sailor Moon, right?
Sailor Moon, yeah.
Yeah, they said, oddly, I think Sailor Moon versus Captain Marvel is a good example of a strong female with cool feminine traits like compassion, emotional nurturing, versus Captain Marvel, who is stoic, solitary, and calculating.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting comparison because Sailor Moon is obviously very feminine, very much a woman, but is still like a superhero and all of that. Whereas Captain Marvel is almost like a stand-in for a man.
She's a toxic man in many ways, specifically,
yeah.
right? Yeah. I actually like comparing Wonder Woman to, because they're in kind of a similar universe at least. Like Wonder Woman is in many ways kind of like, especially first movie of Wonder Woman of the recent diatribe, not the second, right? She's incredibly nurturing. She cares like about like every kid that she comes across, but she's also incredibly like strong. And I think like, yeah, in a lot of ways, like this is kind of like the criticism that I've had of kind of like the women's movement is it feels like, this is what I say, like the women's movement feels like it was spearheaded by a lot of women that were like me, which like, I really do have a personality that is just naturally driven towards like masculinity. Like I just am a lot more disagreeable in general. I much more interested in things. I dominantly just like want to like build an empire and control the world, right? Like I'm very in that archetype. The issue is that a lot of the women's movements I appreciate because they made space for me to exist in a world where only masculine things really mattered, and they opened up the gateway for women to explore that, right? The issue is that they forgot that the feminine mattered the whole time, and they left behind in a lot of ways like all of the other women. And so like I kind of had that experience. Like I was like definitely a tomboy. I I just don't know if I fully like. In my case specifically, I just didn't really grow out of it. Like I'm not afraid of dresses anymore,
Yeah,
and
I
I
feel
like
like
value aesthetic.
like you have embraced like the whole makeup and everything for depending on
Yep, yep.
whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, for like aesthetic purposes and stuff like that, and like I like looking good, but yeah, there's definitely like this. I think a lot of women feel this desire to map into masculinity because their society keeps telling everyone that masculine traits are the best thing and the most important thing, which is why a bunch of girls just like convince themselves into that because they want to compete, and there's an understanding to that. But my question is, can we allow these women to like pursue competence without socially engineering them into like masculinity? Because I don't want more Captain Marvels. I want more Wonder Womans.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess in my mind, you either have to redefine the feminine gender or the feminine masculine traits, or we have to just toss the terminology. I guess in my mind, the reason why I'd want to toss it is I just feel like it's so fucking toxic at this point. It's like the word feminism. I'll never call myself a feminist on a panel. Like I don't even call myself a progressive sometimes because it's like the words are so fucking like destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue is like what words would replace them that would map onto culture very well.
I'd probably just start saying like traits. I would just say the things like, oh yeah, we should all strive to be like competent. We should all strive for like a level of strength. We should all strive for these types of like to be providers and everything and in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, the issue is that like in many ways, like kind of how we talked about like how the gender norms are like kind of emergent from like just realities of both survivalship and biology. This is why I think like we can't get away from these terms. We never will. Because if you start saying just traits like it's good to be kind, it's good to be like strong and brave. The problem is that we're going to start seeing these traits mapping onto groups more consistently, more often, and our brains like patterns. And so we're going to start to categorize those in our minds. And I suspect we'll see the same categorization somewhere.
I kind of agree with you there that it'll happen, but I think it'll happen way less than what we think. Like nobody thought that women would perform this well in school. That's like impossible. Maybe on like girly things like gender studies or whatever they think, but like I'm pretty sure women are starting to outperform men like in areas like related to math, at least at the high school level, which is like that's like women don't do math, right? Like that was like the thought. And I feel like if women can do a lot of things that were traditionally like just the domain of man, right? Like AI is coming after humanity, and now women are coming after men. We're all like eating each other, I guess. I feel like that overjudging of everything, it leads people down weird roads sometimes. That I guess like either people put themselves into boxes or we put other people into boxes, and it gives us a poor perception of the world. But
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe who the fuck knows here.
I feel like that's why it's important to get like this is why like narratives and archetypes matter so much to me, because like I don't know if we ever get away from them, because like feminine and masculine seem to emerge universally in cultures like pretty consistently. And any like good anthropologist, as Ali I'm sure is thinking right now, would point out that like other cultures do have like different types of genders that emerge as well, like a masculine man, a feminine man, a masculine woman.
It's usually binary. I will say the one important caveat though, and this is like I know everybody feels like, oh, this is the craziest time in the world. I will say that like the two huge things that are unique today that seem to be radically changing the things are, one is women working and not just like at the home, but having real jobs, and two, access to reproductive health. And I think that is like dramatically altering how women engage with the world. So like we could say historically, like, oh, women always do these things. I think a lot of that was tied into not being able to work and having to have kids at like early ages and just like dealing with that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I guess what I want to see, because I don't know if our culture will ever abandon these terms, or at least maybe these terms will abandon. I don't know if these constructs or categories will be abandoned, is I want to see like characters emerge that embody the archetypes that we want, that are more like, I want more Wonder Woman stories. I want stories of women being like strong and having lots of masculine traits that are still like soft and caring, so that there's like these types of characters. And I want the same thing. I want to look at like male leaders who, there's tons of historical examples of this, where they were incredibly strong and brave, but they cared about like their brothers in arms, and they like were invested in like the growth of like their troops and stuff like these are the types of heroes that we like need to find a way to appeal to like kids more, because these are good embodiments of good people, right? Like I don't want shallow heroes.
Something that I'm curious about, what actually wait, hold on, let me grab something real quick. I want you to think about this for a second, because there's just another idea. I've had random new ideas. Can you think about like what the most popular movies are for women that feature like women? I'm curious what you think the answer to that is. I'll be right back in a second.
How old are both of us? I am 29 and Stephen is 32, 4? 32 to 4. One of those.
32 to 4?
I don't know. Are you 32 or 34?
Me? Oh, 34.
It's right in the
Okay.
range.
Yeah, what do you think the answer to that is?
I'm going to suspect it's like, are we including like rom-coms, like popular movies
Yes.
that, yeah, it's probably a rom-com, something like that.
Here's something that I thought was interesting. When we look at the types of movies traditionally that boys have to model themselves after, that they aspire to be, the victory condition oftentimes is like grandiose. It's like winning wars, being superheroes, conquering the planet, defeating the biggest evil villain ever. It's stuff that like in an abstract sense, there's like second order and third order like traits that we maybe can embody. Like Spider-Man learns, coming of age as you get older, you get more responsibility. The lessons are kind of hard to apply directly to life unless you think about it quite a bit. But but for women, I wonder if like their movies have more achievable ends, where it's like, oh, like drama in a male movie is killing the villain, and drama in a female movie, I think, tends to be overcoming some like internal problem that most people have, women and men, right? Getting over like an ex, or getting over yourself, or getting out of the way of your own, like stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I would definitely agree that those are probably like the main arc. Like, yeah, for sure, most boys' movies that they like are heroes, rah rah rah, beat up bad guys, save the world. Whereas like a lot of popular ones is just like I'm insecure. A lot of it though isn't just like getting over internal struggles. A lot of it is like I'm insecure and a guy rescues me. It's like a lot of rom-com themes, and that's starting to shift in like the way that we're writing things. But especially when I grew up, most of the rom-coms were like I'm an insecure girl who doesn't know how beautiful she is, but she's actually incredibly gorgeous without makeup on, and she's always rejected by her friends and everyone until this perfect jock comes along and sees her and then rescues her from like essentially rescues her from the anxiety and existential fear of like nobody valuing her.
Yeah, it happens. But I mean, there were movies like Legally Blonde and stuff where I think wasn't that her figuring stuff out? Yeah, yeah.
Right, just like there are hero stories for young men that yeah, the crux is oftentimes like saving the world, but in the process of it, a large portion of it is like overcoming self, right? Right, like Iron Man is like, yeah, a lot of the stories about him like saving the world, but a large portion of it is like him learning how to like have humanity and how to like put others before himself. Just like I think Harry Potter is like, I suspect it's got a larger female fan base than male. I'm not totally sure though. Do you know? Or like Lord of the Rings. I think.
Have you read all of Harry Potter?
No, my parents told me it was evil when I was growing up, so I barely
I stand
watched the
Harry
movies.
Potter hardcore. I love it, and it was like a childhood thing. But I actually really didn't like the character development in Harry Potter because there was a thing that happened where it feels like Harry matures a lot towards the end of a book, and then it resets at the start of the next book, and that actually triggered the fuck out of me. I noticed that even growing up reading. I'm on like book 4, 5, or 6, and I'm like, how are you still acting like a little kid at the beginning of the book? I think in the beginning of book 7. They're like hunting Horcruxes or whatever, and they're like crying about like how boring it is. And I'm like, bro, you guys have like, Harry, you killed like a giant basilisk when you were like fucking 2 years old. You're like, how the fuck are you guys bored and angsty? And that reset of like the character development at the start of every book actually drove me crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's more masculine, but yeah.
see, what's interesting to me is like I know a lot of women who love like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, and like young adult fiction is like exploding. Like Twilight series. So like almost everything that women often read, especially growing up, there's going to be an element of romance included, but like they're increasingly, like girls are increasingly reading things where like you've got like Hunger Games with like Katniss, or you've got Divergent, or that other crappy series where she's like kind of a vampire hunter. I can't remember what it's called. But we're like increasingly seeing this like young adult fiction that is mostly consumed by women. And in fairness, it's possibly because women are just doing most of the reading. I'm not totally sure. But what we're seeing is this like the culture, in many ways, this is like a win for like feminism, is that like we're increasingly seeing female archetypes that are existing, that are complex, that oftentimes some of them are softer than others, right? Katniss has soft pieces, and like in many ways the soft pieces in the state of the war like is part of what like I think like breaks her. Right, so we have like these varying levels of like complex female characters, but we see women immersing themselves in like these incredible worlds where like the women are trying to save the world. And like anyone who tries to say, for example, that like Hunger Games isn't like a at least a blockbuster series that captures like the heart's mind of like tons of young people is just like coping. Like, of course it does. And so like I feel like a lot of the stories that we were telling women in the past was like a representation of the box we were like asserting women into. And that's been like kind of cracked open for the good, like for the better, I think, for the most part. There's cons that always come with it. What I want to see is our culture doing the same for like young boys and young men, of like seeing the archetypes of like incredibly respect-worthy men like cracking open, and different stories and narratives that like men can exist in that are like deep and meaningful, and like capture kids' minds.
What do you think about what do you think, people ask me this question, like what are good role models for men? Can you think in modern movies of like what are good people that like young men should be modeling themselves after? Or
Unironic, like Captain America's probably like one of the better ones that I can think of. Because he's like, the only reason he becomes a hero is because he's like got a self-sacrificial heart, right? But it's like, that's a pretty, he's still like a pretty shallow format.
Isn't he dead now?
Captain America? I don't know. I don't know. I don't follow this.
That was our generation's heroes. He's gone now. Okay.
Oh, damn. I mean, I'm not watching tons of like kids like content literature, obviously. This is the problem. Everyone asks me this question and I struggle with answers. Like there's like Keanu Reeves seems pretty cool.
No, come on.
Oh no, I know. This is the problem. Is like,
I know, because it's movies like, it's like revenge movies. It's probably not who you want people modeling.
Yeah. The best I can think of would be like Aragorn. I think Aragorn's a great male role model. The
How
problem
old
is
is that movie? Is it 30
exactly,
years old?
exactly,
40 years old?
exactly. Yeah. Well, the problem is that like in so many ways, I think like because this is like why I have a soft spot for men. Like when we look at like the intergenerational trauma, particularly amongst like young men with like multiple wars, and then like single like fathers leaving their kids and stuff, we have like this repeated pattern of like an emptying of like male role models. And I think like the best way to me that is evidence that this has occurred is the lack of like characters. Like you're right, how old is Aragorn? And Aragorn wasn't written even in my generation. It was written like almost a century before it, not quite a century, but like decades before I was even born. So it's like, how much is Aragorn even a good representation of what my culture thought masculinity was? It was more like an older culture. Yeah.
I circle jerk this movie really hard, so now my fan base all anti jerks me, which is annoying. But I actually think a really good dichotomy of this masculine versus feminine traits embodied in the other gender was the husband guy from Everything Everywhere All at Once. It actually it mirrors it so well too, not only because
which character?
The husband.
Waymond.
Yes, Waymond.
Yes.
Because if you look at the start of that movie, the arc for that like whole character, like in all the universe, is interesting because he starts off as a really, really cool character because he's like ultra masculine. He's super violent. He's got shit under control. He like embraces like all of the hyper masculine traits. But the way that he ends up helping Evelyn the most at the end is kind of almost being hyper feminine, right?
Yeah.
Like don't fight, be nice to everybody, be kind or whatever. And then that's like the part that she has to win because she has a very masculine personality in order to, I guess, be what she needs to be to kill her daughter. But yeah, but there aren't very many. There aren't very many role models. I don't think that function in that way.
Yeah, and like the issue with Waymond that's really interesting is like in the different multiverses that exists, he like embodies more traits of masculinity versus others, right? Like in one, he's like a super trained super fighter, and yet it's like the soft feminine Waymond who in many ways like saves the day, right? He's the one that tells Evelyn like, don't fight in the way you're trying to fight, like fight with kindness, like fight with kindness. Which is super interesting. The main thing is like, I love that character. I don't think 14-year-old boys care. They'll never care about, 14-year-old boy looks at Waymond and goes, I want to be Waymond, you know?
Yeah, I understand, but then that kind of gets back to what we were talking about before, like why? Well, it's because he's hyper feminine, kind of gay, kind of lame, right? Like, isn't that the issue?
I feel like it's the lack of masculinity specifically. Like, because I think about like somebody mentioned Jocko Willink. I think Jocko Willink is a really interesting example.
Wait, what the fuck is Jocko Willink?
He's like an ex-Army Navy SEAL. He's like super like fucking jacked. He's like he's so jacked his skull looks jacked. He's just like a muscle meat tower. But he writes like children's books for kids and like reads like these books to kids. And
is that the bar then? It has to be ex-Navy SEAL whose cranium is jacked?
No, but I think just in the way that like the reason why I love Wonder Woman is because she embodies both masculine and feminine traits. I can like map onto her. Or like, have you ever read like Brandon Sanderson, like Stormlight Archives?
Nope.
Okay, there's a character in there named Navani, and Navani was like the first female character besides Wonder Woman that I saw that I was like, gosh, I want to be like her. Which I basically, in narratives, I always just kind of want to be like the male characters. Like, I'm like, they're way cooler.
Because they are cooler, true.
They are, because there's a shell of femininity. We haven't really understood it complexly. Just like how like we need more Wonder Womans, we need more examples of male heroes that embody both of these traits at the same time. Because I think it's really hard to map onto women when you're 14 because you're seeking like a male role model. And it's like, this to me is evidence that nobody gives a fuck about like sex that much. That it's like, most guys look at Waymond and like, yeah, but he's not really a good male role model. And it's like, but he's got a dick. Isn't that all you care about? Is like fucking biology? He's a great male role model. But the problem is that all that matters is the performance. It's like the aesthetic. So like if Waymond as a whole person had both soft kindness and was an incredible fighter, he would have both like, not even jacked, just like a capable fighter.
When he was like in the beginning parts when he summoned the other universes, right?
Well, he was able, I guess it's hard to say because he would like summon like kung fu. So I don't know if that was him or somebody else.
Oh my God. This is the best example. Have you ever seen the show House?
Yeah.
Have you seen all of it?
Yeah.
One of the best episodes of TV ever that actually explores this concept better than anything else I can think of. Do you remember the episode of House where the whole episode was following Cuddy?
Oh, yes. It was like season 4 or 5.
It was such a good episode. Yeah, because it shows her having to deal with all of House's antics on the other end.
This is after she was a mom, right? So she was like taking care of the baby too, right?
Taking care of her baby and she's doing everything else. Like, oh my God. That was a really good episode because it's always fun to see like the antics of like your beloved protagonist when you're somebody that has to actually deal with it. That was really good. Here's something I don't know if I gave you this take before, but it actually triggered the fuck out of me. When it comes to showing both sides of masculinity, have I told you about the James Bond movies?
No, you haven't.
Have you watched all the James Bond movies, the Daniel Craig ones?
I've watched a number of them.
Did you see the last one where spoiler alerts?
I don't care about spoilers at all.
He dies.
Okay.
Yeah, have you not seen this one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. James Bond is the most hyper-masculine guy ever, right? Even the new one is hyper-masculine, strong, fighting, fucks lots of women, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Something that actually triggered the fuck out of me in the last movie was he finds out at the end that he has a child with another woman, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, I don't know if I've ever seen, I'd have to recommend, I don't know if I've ever seen like hyper-masculine men in a fatherly role, right? Because hyper-masculine fathers are the worst fathers. They're stoic. They don't ever talk to you. Everything handled by mom, and they usually die in movies or they disappear forever, right?
Yeah.
Or they come back when their kid has been killed, right? So I was like, this is really interesting. We're going to see James Bond as a father. But as soon as he finds out he's a father, he fucking gets killed. And I'm like, that was such a fucking cop-out. Because seeing like James Bond like playing with his kid at the park or something like that, that would just be such an interesting portrayal on screen that I can't, maybe there is an example I just can't think of, but I can't really think of an example like that on screen. Arguably, it happened to Iron Man as well, right? Iron Man became a father, had a daughter, and died. And you never actually, I don't know if you ever see hyper-masculine men in the father role. Because like being a good father probably requires you to embrace some level of femininity because the hypermasculine dads are just the absent fathers that don't talk or say anything to their kid, you know?
Yeah, it's like Mufasa. Mufasa's an incredible father and like dies within like 15 minutes of Lion King. Yeah. I mean, in so many ways, doesn't that like tell us something about like what our society struggles in? Like we don't,
what you value.
How do we even conceive of fatherhood? Because they're like, oh, that's some pussy shit. And it's like, it's just not. Like anyone who has been like raped, like, I don't know if you've had this experience, right? Like, cause like me and my dad, like I love my dad, but like he has like autism. And so like my childhood wasn't like super ideal, but my one man that I respect more than almost anyone on the planet is my godfather, because he is like masculine in so many ways, right? He is like a very successful stocks trader, made shitloads of money just doing exchange and financial consultation. He's kind of a badass. Like he goes traveling all the time and like has dealt like with being like threatened to be kidnapped like multiple times, like a fucking boss, where he just like doesn't even get scared and like takes pictures of them, and like he's super cool. And yet when you meet him, most guys would be like, this guy's a fucking like pussy loser, because he's so soft and like gentle. And there's something to like when I think about like my relationship with like the feminine and the masculine, I think part of probably why the masculine in many ways has been easier for me is because like all the Christian women at church were rejecting me constantly, while I had like my godfather specifically who was like always encouraging me and like being soft towards me. And man, having a father figure who is like good to his child, I kind of say like mothers role in my mind a lot of times with like their children is to like teach their children like survival, like how to emotionally regulate, how to just like connect with other people, like really basic fundamental shit that if it's broken, like you're a whole world of fucked up. But in a lot of ways, like men often like teach their children like how to like thrive. And having like a father who like takes you on adventures and like tells you stories and like lets you like get away with doing like cheeky things that, you know, like mom wouldn't let you, is like something so understated by our culture that like it's just, it's so depressing. Like it's like if there's nothing more that I can do in this world, I would love to be able to like have kids so that Nick could be their dad, because I think he'd be like an incredible dad. And like they're just, we don't really have these conceptions of like fatherhood
in media, because
Yeah.
they're like dying or just whatever.
Or they're pathetic. They're just like bowled over by their wives and like, or they're like Homer types where they're just like lol cows, basically.
Yeah.
Which is really sad.
People are bringing up Kratos as an example. I haven't played the God of War game. Maybe.
I don't know either.
Huh.
Ellen Ripley, somebody is saying, as a good representation of feminine and masculine, being brave and caring.
Oh, from Alien?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the old movies just did it really well. I would argue, I think Sarah Connor was a pretty good example too in the Terminator movies.
Old media was so good. Like some of the movies that came out in like the 90s were just brilliant.
I always forget her fucking name. Is it Kid or Beatrice? What the fuck was her name in Kill Bill? What was the name of the main character?
I don't know. I can't remember.
That was a good she was a good example too, but
yeah.
Was it actually Beatrix Kiddo? Oh, I was thinking Beatrix, and I was wondering if it was because my mind was Harry Potter brain. Have you ever played The Last of Us?
No, but I am watching the show.
Oh, I've only through episode 3. Joel is probably a good example of. He starts off as a very horrible father figure, but his arc is growing into it, I think.
Yeah, and like softening in, which is good. I guess not to turn it back into you. What do you think that you embody like the feminine and masculine well, or?
I think I do. I think I embody both pretty well. I think that one of my selling points, I think when I deal with people is outwardly, especially on stream, my demeanor is very masculine. Like I'm very aggressive, very dominant, screaming at people, very passionate, et cetera, et cetera. But like in an interpersonal setting, I can be like very chill. I can have like pretty emotionally reflective conversations. I can be like very considerate. Like I think things that are considered traditionally like feminine. I feel like I can balance both those out pretty decent on a personal level.
Do you think that like one is less integrated than the other, or?
I mean, just by virtue of the character that I am, probably the feminine side is less integrated because I don't have very many close, emotionally fulfilling friendships, but I also don't look for them. So. Yeah,
I've noticed. Have you noticed after? I'm curious if you've noticed this after the Max situation that our friendship dynamic shifted a little bit. It might have just been busyness, but I'm curious if there's also been like a shift for you on that like element. Which I'm not upset with, but just to be clear, I'm not putting my fifis in this. I'm just curious about your thoughts.
No, I think during that arc, there were like 8 different people that I reached out to like start to form friendships with. And you and kind of Nick were, I think, 2 of those people. But then after the Max Live, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my shit.
Yeah. Do you think that is like, so do you think that is harming you, or do you think it is like a failed experiment and it would be better to not because again, I know somebody in chat's going to be like, she's just trying to be, I'm not trying to max you in like a friendship conversation. I promise you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it felt friendships and interpersonal relationships like that to me felt like a kind of like a fun bonus. But it doesn't feel like as much of a requirement to be functional as I think it is for most people. That's the feeling.
When I'm thinking about like your boundary stuff specifically and like voicing needs, how like you have a hard time like seeing if they really like matter that much, especially because you probably have the awareness that like you can probably like swallow anything and like make it not matter that much.
All right, until it does.
Until it does, yeah.
Well.
How much do you think it impacts your relationships? Because there's an element where sometimes people want to love on you by being asked to give to you.
That's like it's so deeply ingrained. I've been so independent for my whole life. It's like the idea of integrating somebody into my life is like an important person that gives me things. It's just like such a foreign alien concept. I don't even.
Yeah,
I'm like the worst person to get gifts for. I'm the worst person to like. If you, like buying hot chocolates for me is probably like the nicest thing.
yeah, one thing I think about with boundaries, especially, that
Uh-huh.
was, I learned from Nick, because Nick has a proclivity where he can always put himself second, and he very
Uh-huh.
much like struggles with asking for things and whatnot. Is one of the things that I noticed about boundaries that have been like meaningful to me is that like he loves me and like trusts me enough that he knows that hopefully it's getting better, that like he loves me and trusts me enough to make asks of these boundaries knowing that I'll want to give them to him. And that like he realizes that in like the weighing of the values of like whether it's worth bringing up or not, part of it is realizing like not only will our relationship be better if I have this boundary because I need it to not like resent them, which I don't think is your issue. Doesn't seem to me that you resent people like at all.
I
But or do you?
Go
I
ahead.
could be wrong. Do you resent people?
I hope I try not to. Here, this is like an interesting issue to run through, and it actually might not be true. This might be a maladaptive observance I've made of the world. That's actually not true. Maybe I just like filter things negatively. I feel like when it comes to making asks of people, in my mind, I feel like the only asks people want to fulfill are the ones that like make them happy. I notice that there is a lot of people that I interact with who do things for me, but they're kind of doing things for themselves because like the particular thing that they are doing is just a thing that's like really nice. It's like the equivalent of like when a husband buys his wife a brand new gift and it's like a super Dyson vacuum cleaner, like 7,000, and he's like, "Look, now you can clean the house even better," you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that feeling sometimes where like if I'm making an ask, like a truly difficult ask, where it's like this is something you probably don't like that much, it's almost like impossible to do that because there's always gonna be like heavy resistance. I feel, but that might not be true. Maybe I just feel that way.
Yeah, I mean there might be. I just think like to me like love isn't doing things ask for other people because you like to. Like that's liking people. That shit's easy, right? Like love gets tricky when like somebody's asked like somebody is giving you something that you don't want to receive and they don't really have to like they don't really want to give it to you either, right? Like making an ask that you know is almost exclusively going to hurt that person or not like be something that they like, but you're willing to trust them to make the ask anyways because you trust them enough to love you to basically like take that cost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean what you're saying makes sense. Yeah, something like that.
I hear the but. Yeah, I hear the but.
No, it's what you're saying makes sense. Like intellectually, I know it's just something I have to, I guess, like emotionally lean into.
Because I wonder if boundaries would be easier for you if you were willing to basically put into the weight that a person who loves you would want you to make the ask, even if they don't like it, because they want to give to you anyways. Like they value that you're willing to protect the relationship. Because in my mind, like if I make an ask of somebody that I know that they don't really want and they do really react really poorly, I understand that, but that to me is like a little bit of like, okay, like that tells me a little bit about like our relationship, at least in this area of like what I can and cannot trust you with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Then it's just a matter of figuring out, and then that's another difficult thing. Is it's a matter of figuring out like what is a reasonable ask sometimes, especially because everything in my life is so abnormal.
I guess here's something else I guess that maybe I'd be curious about your thoughts. Does it matter if it's reasonable?
Yeah, it does a lot to me, but maybe it shouldn't. I tried to ask that question of Ayla, like, how do you figure out what's a reasonable ask? And it took her like, I think 5 minutes to even understand the question. Because she was doing it like in a very philosophical sense of like, well, if it's something that you want, why wouldn't you ask for it? I think that was like essentially her engagement, and it took a long time to figure out like, I think eventually I had to rephrase it to like, what is an ask that the majority of society would be comfortable delivering on, given like normal parameters for like, et cetera, et cetera. Like I had to like qualify the fuck out of that to make it make sense to her. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Ayla's a really interesting one to watch you engage with.
Wait, why? Because she's gonna be max too. No, I'm just kidding.
No. I haven't watched enough of her. I literally wouldn't be able to tell unless I talked to her. I think she's really ahead of you on on a couple of like specific areas in like this area. For example, like her just like immediately knowing like you don't have to ask the question, is it a reasonable ask? Because in that it begs an assumption that the person is weighing your value against the ask. And like that's not what love is.
I mean, like, I don't know if I agree with it. Like, I think that there are some things that we can say are clearly reasonable. Like if Nick were to say, like, listen, I really want to try a new diaper fetish out, and that involves like shitting the bed. Like, I think it's probably reasonable. Like, this is a hard no. Like, I love you, but I'm just never gonna fulfill this. I'm sorry. Right? I think that's reasonable. And I think if Nick were to end the relationship, I think most people are like, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Listen, I really want to try a new diaper fetish out and involve shitting the bed.
Okay. I feel like the ask isn't what is the reasonable part anyways. I would say it's reasonable to say no to that ask, which is a different orientation.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Right? Like you can make the ask and the person can say no, and it would be completely reasonable and understandable for them to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But can't you still make the ask?
Well, yeah, but I mean that's obviously. But the question isn't. The question isn't like, can you make the ask? Is it reasonable to like demand or expect this ask to be met? Right.
I feel like when you're making an ask, you're not demanding it. Usually, boundaries, you're kind of demanding it, but asking like, "Hey, this is what I need in the relationship," or anything like that. There's an element that like is an ask. I guess the demand would be if your ask is, I need this thing, and if it doesn't happen, it might be the end of the relationship. Okay, well, that's definitely like a different type of ask. But like, at least in the case of like the diaper fetish or like something like that, something akin to that, can you like take on something that would like kind of suck a little bit for me anyways, basically?
Yeah, I guess I feel like that's what asks ultimately are, right? Are establishing like these are things that I kind of need for this relationship to work well. And at some point, if enough of them are being met, then you're
yeah
relationship, right?
Yeah. I think like at like a large like macro scale for sure, right? That's the like transactionalism in relationships is real, right? There's an element where like, yes, if you make too many asks and it's unfair or unreasonable at like a macro level, at some point that's going to like be a problem. So there's like when you're making an ask, I suppose you get to like keep in mind maybe the balance of the macro. But I feel like you're so far behind that where like you're even hesitant to even make the ask that I don't know. I guess I wouldn't worry that much about the macro, but maybe that's just my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. What else? Anything else?
No. Why'd you get back into StarCraft?
I beat Factorio. I just got the itch. I didn't want to play League again. I miss like 1v1 games. Yeah.
That's good. Fair enough.
Is that okay? Is that acceptable?
Sure. Did you go get my gift yet?
Which gift?
Oh, you bitch, for your birthday.
Let's go rock climbing.
Wait. What did you get me?
I told you to pick it up. I'm not telling you what I got you. I told you it was an extremely expensive, rare gift that I shipped from Amazon.
Wait, would I
to your old apartment? It's blue. What's up?
Oh fuck! I'm worried that I either picked it up and like thought it was from Alina and I threw it away, or.
Wait, why? If you thought it was from Alina, why the fuck would you throw it away? Very mean.
Or like I asked her like, "Is this yours or whatever?" She's like, "No, it's not mine." I'm like, "Oh, okay, this must have been a mistake."
I think I signed it. I think my name was attached to it.
Oh.
Like I sent it as a gift.
Huh.
There's a little cat thing. I'm gonna be so sad if you threw this out. Oh my gosh.
I don't think I would have found that out. Fuck. Wait, can you
I can link you. I mean, I can just. It's a little cat. It's a little like cat plushie thing.
It's a little. Can you like do a check on the shipping to make sure that it showed up at my house and it didn't get like rejected or something?
It went to your old house. Yeah, I checked. I sent it in like a week before your birthday, so it's probably gone by now. It's okay. It wasn't actually rare or expensive.
Well, now I feel bad.
Wait, you should. I'm just kidding. Bridge burnt. Friendship over. I'm returning your fucking camera too, bitch. Wait.
Um,
Oh, you're so okay. Headset cut out. All right. Well,
yeah, is that it? Is that all?
that's
she wrote?
all. That's all she wrote. Now that I know that you can't say my name right most of the time, and you know,
Kyla, I got that.
yeah, your main reaction to my President Sunday thing was oof. Good, solid.
What do you mean by oof? Is that what I said?
Yes, a lot. Oof.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Oof.
Wait,
Oof.
what did you? Wait, what did you ask me that I said oof to?
Nothing. When you were watching my like big video that I released.
Oh,
You're like-
because I understand that it's your life and it's your world, so it feels like so much more important. But when
Yeah.
I looked at it, like in my mind, like President Sunday is such a fucking like loser.
No,
I couldn't imagine like any of his shit.
That's
Like,
it, I
going
know.
anywhere. Yeah, because it's just like all of his accusations are so like that one tweet really summarized it well from Loner Box. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, with
Yeah.
the like big guy like walking into the store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for how ridiculous all of his claims were, and I'm like, damn, she's going really hard fighting this loser fucks allegations that just super don't fucking matter because this guy's just such a fucking loser. Yeah.
Well, the issue is if they get sent to employers, and employers are very like mamby-pamby and like kind of, I just don't trust employers to like,
No, I understand what you
You know
mean.
what I mean?
It's like my shit with the Mac stuff, right? Like
yeah.
some people, were like, why do you care that much? Assuming you haven't raped anybody. It's like, yeah, just it feels really fucking weird. And especially when like employers and stuff get involved, yeah, it feels really bad.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want his video being the only one out there that like people could send to my employers because like there's just like it implies like crime. So it's like I don't want my employers thinking like there's any chance that I embezzled money from the government. I just like I can't have that for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
That's all she wrote. Thanks for chatting.
You said
Anything
you're
else
not
on
gonna.
your mind?
Is he gearing up to do like another like big video or?
I'm not sure. Sounds like it, possibly. Not really
He's
sure.
tweeting a lot of that. He's committed. Absurd,
Yeah.
the most absurd thing, blah blah blah, and like yeah.
I'm sure it's nothing. The most I can think is my fucking prof, Wendy, attached the wrong date on her damn. So she did the right day, but she kept it as 2022. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So I emailed her and I got that corrected and like post the correction, obviously. But that's all I can think of other than like maybe he's gonna like, I don't know. Who knows? He's conspiracy brained. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. Any tips that you've noticed?
No, I mean I feel like the only thing I would say is like brevity. If you could do the videos like shorter. It kind of sucks when somebody's got like a punchy like this is why Kyla's a fucking scammer of the government, and it's like okay, well here's the response. It's an hour and 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
That's probably not.
Yeah, I was thinking of releasing another version that's like 20 minutes long.
Yeah, just to condense like here's his point, here's my point, here's his point, here's my point.
Yeah.
That'd be better. Yeah.
Yeah. Any tips in general about, I was mentioning wanting like any feedback about debating. I don't know if you've seen any of my debates though in a while.
No, I haven't seen anything recently. Are you still doing a lot of kind of like the dating red pill related stuff?
Yeah, I'm still doing that, but I'm still like debate wise, I'm doing like the classic Twitch poll stuff. So like tons and tons of different topics. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad because a lot of my like native community is getting a little bit exhausted of it, but but all of my like new viewers and stuff are coming from that world. So
Yep.
I've got people saying like this stuff is boring, I'm done with it, and simultaneously it's like by far like my most popular content. So obviously like people in general aren't done with it.
I know. Well, that's like kind of the mindfucky thing, right? Like so many people are like, I wish you just did like more of your academic like psych stuff. And then I interview, I can't underscore to you enough how big of a deal Stephen Farrowan is. Like this guy has an H index of like over 200. He is known as the most influential psychologist who is like alive today, as far as like research contributions. I got like 1,000 views on that fucking video. Like nobody cares at all. So it's like, I know people are saying that they like want this, but it feels like they want the aesthetic of this more than they actually like they don't really want to watch it. They just want to say, I'm subscribed to a channel that does science stuff. But it's like, I get that, but like, that's not going to
like they want to watch it, but they also want to be entertained, and they don't realize how hard it is to make that type of content like entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the issue. Here's my theory with drama content specifically is it's like drama content is so appealing to everyone, and like this dating red pill stuff, because necessarily in many ways you're talking like your viewer feels like they're involved, like it involves them in some way, because when you're listening to a drama you can picture like, this is what I would do in this situation, oh, I wouldn't have said this, I would have said it like that. Like you can kind of imbue and project yourself into the drama. And same with like dating and red pill stuff, like most people have dated or like tried to do relationships and can kind of map onto like these interpersonal struggles that we have. Yeah, which is I think why it's like so popular, and it's easy to consume. Like you can throw it on the background and like clean your house and you don't have to like worry about it or like look up words because you like somebody's using like technical language.
Yeah. Everybody loves drama everywhere. It's always funny when people act like they're above it, when like in any industry, like drama is king always, right?
Always, yeah. Just do you think it's just better to embrace it or like try to tailor it in a certain direction? Or
I mean, like you should always try your best to, I guess, like be like live up to whatever values, right, that you're trying to aspire to. So if like the psychology and everything's important, obviously you want to include that as much as you can. But like you can't just like suicide your channel on the table of like trying to be the most academic person you can be, you know?
right. Yeah, you have to be like more flexible. Yeah.